Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday. Sidelines, college football, basketball, blitz, baseball, recruiting, you name it, we're going to talk about it. Got a great lineup today. Going to start off with Billy Roberts over Brookhaven, right next to Atlanta. And then we're going to head to Knoxville, talk with Jimmy Hyams, longtime sports writer for the Knoxville News Sentinel, and talk about SEC basketball. Hell of an ending to the Auburn-Tennessee basketball game Saturday. And, hey, man, you got 40 minutes to play the game. Comes down to a last-second shot to try to tie it from three-point range. That's part of it. That's why you wish you'd have played better the whole rest of the game. But the fact that two teams, ranked teams, one of them, number 2 in the country, Tennessee, combined for a total of 89 points, says a lot about where we are in the state of college basketball. Where are the shooters? Where are the high-powered offenses? Is there a truly great team in America tonight? Top of hour number 2, Franz Beard checks in with us, GatorBaitMedia.com. Franz will talk all things SEC, college football. He's always got a lot of great daily thoughts, and we'll get into what his mind is thinking. He's one of the 2 most interesting men in the world, along with Frank Duffy. And in the 4th segment, we'll talk with Wess Moore, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz over in Little Rock, and talk about Razorbacks and all things going on in the SEC out on the Western Front. He's also Fox Sports Channel 16 in Little Rock. Love getting the beat writers, the beat reporters. Sports is what we talk about 6 days a week. Hear us live, or hear us after the show if you miss it. And, of course, we're on radio stations like Sports Radio 104.7 FM in Cookeville, Tennessee, the Cumberland Plateau, and Kicks 96.3. Radio Alabama, Alexander City, Lake Martin. Follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. 6 days a week, again, Monday through Saturday. We're your safe space from all the other stuff, politics and all that garbage you don't want to hear about. I mean, I tell you what, I thought dog fighting and cockfighting was illegal, but that's pretty much what most of the national media is like. You just get one guy in one corner, another person in the other corner, and a moderator, and they scream and holler for 7 minutes, and they take a sponsored commercial break. So we have a lot of fun. We are upbeat. We are positive. We are solution-oriented, and we get smart people like Billy Roberts on. And Billy, another great weekend. SEC basketball, college basketball as a whole. Don't know where we are. We're going to talk with Jimmy Hyams here in the next segment from Knoxville. But is there a truly great team that you have seen, whether it's in the SEC or the Big 12 or whatever? And like we've seen in the past, we had this discussion last week. You don't have guys like you had 20 and 30 years ago that would sacrifice and just be all about the rebounds. You might have 35 or 40 of those guys around. Now you've got Oscar Tshiebwe and a handful of people that do it. And if you've got a couple of big men on your team that can do, shoot a hook shot, play defense, block a lot of shots, alter a lot of shots, man, it's so rare. Most teams don't know how to deal with it, do they?
They don't, it's, but we sound at the risk of being like old men and they get off my yard mode if we talk about, guys 30 years ago played different, I think that the athletes now, the way they train, the guys that are older, couldn't play with these guys, but had they grown up training like that, they probably could have, so there's the difference, they just, training is advanced. These guys are better physical athletes and, freaks of nature athletically, but the fundamentals sometimes aren't there. But the game changes every couple of years. There's evolution. Yeah. So we got to be careful to be like, back in our day, I don't want to go there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yelling at the clouds, get off of my lawn. No, right. That's not what it is. What I think what we're seeing, though, is just the fundamentals are lacking. And they, in spite of doing all this year-round training, and the physical part of it, it's just unbelievable. You're seeing so many guys that look, when they're 17 and 18 years old, look like they're 30 years old, physically, but the fundamentals aren't there. So
well, I mean,
I think
LeBron certainly looked like that. That guy was a grown man. They said allegedly he was 16, 17 years old. He looked like he was 30.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like a kid that might have gotten failed 6 times in, 6th grade because, he had a full beard and was fully developed. He wasn't like a skinny guy at all. And I'm like, there's no way that kid's a high school kid.
Well, and think about Greg Oden, Ohio State. I mean, that guy was, he
looked like Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, he was injured, and his career really never was able to take off. But it's not about back in the day or what. It's the fundamentals. And if you trained Larry Bird and Bill Laimbeer and Dennis Rodman at the level that these guys are training today, I think that they would run circles around them. I think you could take the best 3 on 5. That's what it would be, because they're a lot more physical. They're much more likely to dive into the crowd for a ball. I mean, it's not that you don't see it, but they loved the game. And now, again, you look at a lot of these teams, they get beat. They've got NIL deals. They don't really care. That's the unfortunate part about it. All right, let's switch gears. Got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. 49ers and the Eagles. All we've heard about Jalen Hurts was when Tua came in the national championship game against Georgia in 2017. He doesn't have the mechanics to make it at the next level in the NFL. He can't do this and that. Well, look at the guy's 1-loss record, okay? He went to Oklahoma. I think Lincoln Riley put him in the offense. He threw for about 4,500 yards. Gets in the NFL. He won't be drafted very high, maybe as a free agent. He's a 2nd-round pick. I'm not saying that every NFL scout, Billy, knows everything, because there are a lot of teams that draft players that are continuously horrible. It's just in their DNA. But I could tell Jalen Hurts, just with my mind, was going to be a good player in the NFL. And he's got his team in year 3 in the Super Bowl. And he doesn't have the perfect throwing motion, perfect mechanics, size, whatever. But all he does is find ways and excuses for his teams to win, and he makes everybody around him better. Why is it so hard for so many people out there to accept Jalen Hurts as a stud, as an NFL, as a elite quarterback, because he's got his team in the Super Bowl?
And it probably goes back to, he got benched in the national championship game for a freshman, Tua. And, Alabama went on to win that game in dramatic fashion. And there was a general consensus afterwards that if they had not benched, Jalen, and they lose that game to Georgia. And, that's probably the first exposure a lot of people nationally might have had to Jalen Hurts is like, you look at his win-loss record at that moment in time. I don't know that he had ever lost a game as a starter when he was the Alabama starter up until he got benched in the championship game. I might be wrong about that, but if he lost a game, it was like one game, but that's
many. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Then everybody says, well, how good is this guy if they bench him and a freshman, takes over in the second half and they end up pulling it out and winning the national championship. And so that kind of stain or stigma has stuck with him. And now he can put that to rest. He can bury some reputational demons here this coming week for sure.
Yeah, and you look at the situation. Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant in the NFL draft. And because of injuries at the 49ers quarterback position, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy should be the starter. Have they made a change about Jimmy Garoppolo going to start? Have we heard?
Well, I think, isn't it the Chiefs with Mahomes? I don't think it's the Niners. So I think.
Holy cow! Yeah. I've lost my mind.
Yeah. So, I think this is going to come down to Andy Reid. This is the Andy Reid Bowl. He used to be the Eagles coach, and now he's with the Chiefs.
What am I doing? My apologies.
No worries.
I haven't had coffee yet, Billy. The Chiefs. No, and
But
the
I
Chiefs.
think with what this really speaks to is Andy Reid can develop guys, and when he was at Philadelphia, he even gave Michael Vick a second chance, which is amazing, and helped kind of give him another pretty successful go round in the NFL before he called it a day. So he's quite an accomplished coach. Sometimes if you get a guy with the right coach, he can find out how to make things work for him. And with Jalen at Philadelphia right now, he could always run the ball. Everybody said, well, he's just basically a running back playing the quarterback position. That's what the rap was on him when he was in college.
Yeah.
And he could have been a remarkable NFL running back. There's no doubt about it. There's no question he's a winner. There's no question he's got the physicality to run the ball. But for him to now develop as a true quarterback and drop back and pass the ball, then that says a lot about his heart. We know he's a winner. His record says that. Everywhere he's been a winner. So there was an interesting game that they replayed on TV the other day. You might have caught it. As getting back to Purdy, it was like Iowa State, Oklahoma, and it was those two guys going at each other, Jalen Hurts and Purdy, in a college game from a year or two ago. And it was interesting to watch because those guys both were, having at that moment they were, having great seasons. So, Purdy was definitely a miss, by somebody. But he certainly looked pretty good in that game, where he was the Iowa State quarterback. Holy smoke.
Yeah. And a little momentary, a bit of insanity there. Just, I know, no, the Eagles beat the Niners 31-7. I don't know what I was talking about. No,
well, Purdy,
Chiefs.
Purdy getting hurt. They put him. I watched that game, and he had to hand the ball off. He couldn't. He had an elbow injury or something, and couldn't throw the ball. So
but this Chiefs Eagles game for the Super Bowl. Look at Patrick Mahomes, and I read something, from Jerry Kirby, who will be on the show with us again Friday, and really knows the NFL really well. And Jerry said that he feels like the Chiefs' window is closing because they've only got a few more years. Salary caps and all that stuff will hurt. Andy Reid likely going to retire. We'll get into that Friday, but the Chiefs, in order for elite status to be bestowed upon the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and all that, and what's his contract now? 450, 500 million? Is it?
Yeah,
unbelievable.
They've been to 3 out of the last 4 AFC championship games. So, how much of a run do you want? NFL is not geared for dynasties. Every year you can go from the bottom to the top, So if you've been in the last 3 out of the last 4 AFC championships as the Chiefs have, that there's your window. You don't be greedy and want it to be. There's only one Patriots and Brady window that lasts for 15 years or whatever it did. That's not normal for the NFL.
Well, you had the 49ers had that about a 20-year streak of being just really good. And then they had multiple Super Bowls, 4 with Joe Montana and, Steve Young. And I'm looking at that. This is the kind of pressure that Mahomes probably, he may not feel it though. And Andy Reid, I don't think Andy Reid's going to retire anytime soon. I hope he doesn't. I think he's won. At Philadelphia, he was really good, but when he got to Kansas City, that's when he's taken off. And I think that, you got to have great players, and then great coaches can draw up all the offensive game plans they want or defensive game plans they want. But without the great players, you don't have dynasties. So this Super Bowl matchup is going to be a lot of fun. I'm not going to make my pick yet, but I won't be surprised if Philadelphia wins, but they can run the ball really well. And Jalen Hurts, again, he loves to roll out of the pocket. He can do it, but he can throw the ball. Don't discount his ability to connect with his receivers. And I've watched over the weekend, Billy, a lot on the NFL Network of the great Super Bowl matchups in the past, and I'm watching it last night. It was the Falcons 28, Patriots 6. That's still hard to get over. And and of course, twice the Falcons have been to the Super Bowl and they've lost both times.
Yeah.
And then you watch the St. Louis Rams against the Tennessee Titans. That one, remember, the Titans got the ball down there. The receiver was trying to reach the ball across the goal line.
Yeah.
Right there at the end of the game. They had 6 seconds left and couldn't do it. That is strength training, keeping that guy.
It was unbelievable. And that was a game here in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome.
Yeah.
That particular Super Bowl. And I think it was one of the highest rated ones ever.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. That was a really good ball game,
Yeah.
So
and you look around and these what we see on the college level, like the Senior Bowl this past weekend. It's not about the game on Saturday. It's about the practices Monday through Friday. And that's where so many players, Jim Nagy, executive director of the Senior Bowl, is on the show with us. And we talk with Jim about what do you look for from kids from, FBS, FCS, whether it's, small school, big school. What I really captured from his last comments when he was on a few weeks ago was they look at how does the kid from an SEC or a different Power 5 school react to being pushed around for a few plays by a kid from North Dakota State or Northern Iowa, and vice versa. Can the kid from Northern Iowa who's dominated that league handle the kid from the Power 5? So they're looking at those personality traits because they show up on Sundays. And if you're going to invest money in somebody, Billy, you're going to think twice, 3, 4, 5 times, aren't you?
Absolutely. And, my gripe with the Falcons, speaking of the guys from North Dakota A&M or, these mythical schools, the Falcons always would draft some dude like that where they got a guy from Georgia sitting in their backyard an hour away and would never draft them. And they would always go for these.
Billy, let's do this. Take a quick break. We're going to be right back. I want to pick up on that, why they don't draft the dogs after this. All right, Rob Browne, Monday, college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, sidelines, blitz. Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, having a cool discussion about the Super Bowl coming up. We'll be on with Jimmy Hyams. Will be joining us here in just a moment, talking some SEC basketball. But, Billy, that's the mystery. And everybody, every year, it's all over the place. And, you can read it in The Athletic. You can find it in social media, wherever you are. And that is, why don't the Atlanta Falcons draft more from Georgia? Program an hour away, back-to-back national champions. Last year they had 15 players drafted, 5 in the first round, number 1 pick. And you're probably going to have the number 1 pick again this year, defensive lineman Jalen Carter. And the explanation is?
I mean, there isn't one. And I think they did draft a guy last year fairly high because it would have been crazy not to. But they typically don't. And our former general manager that had been here for a long time, Thomas Dimitroff, he was a guy that, I think he had Tex-Schramm disease. And if you remember, Tex-Schramm was the legendary general manager of the Cowboys, and he was famous for taking these guys that were not classically trained football players, like a Ronaldo Nehemiah from the track and field world, turning them into a receiver, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And striking gold that way. And, that's why, all these other general managers, I think they want to do that. I think they want to show that I've scouted the country so thoroughly that I'm finding some dude, that played 7-man football in Montana, and yet he's going to be a Super Bowl, MVP, and the Falcons were guilty of that. They were drafting these guys that were just a bust the minute they drafted them. You could smell it. You knew it, mainly from what you talked about, that, they've been playing mediocre competition, and on tape they look like a monster, but they haven't been playing a 10-game SEC schedule or 9-game SEC schedule year in and year out against top-notch competition where you could properly evaluate them. Now, contrast that to teams like the Steelers that load up on SEC players, and the Steelers are there every year. They're always a quality team, always a quality NFL organization. They don't really have a dip. They're pretty much a team that's there all the time. New York Giants, their resurgence every couple of years when they get it together. Again, another very well-run franchise, full of SEC players, LSU guys, Georgia guys, Auburn guys. The Giants are great at that. And yet here the Falcons are right in the nerve center of college football, and their drafts are ridiculous every year. And it's gone on for decades. Who knows? There's no answer for it.
Well, it's just like the Detroit Lions. They have so much money. The Ford family has owned them forever, and their fans are just some of the longest suffering fans in sports, pro sports, in any sport. You pick the sport, and the Falcons. Same thing. And one day, they've been to the Super Bowl twice. They've lost both times. So that's interesting. Always.
The old joking around Atlanta a long time ago when we had Atlanta Stadium, if you remember that one back in the day, was that it was
Fulton County Stadium.
Yeah, Fulton County. It was built on top of an Indian burial ground. And so the Falcons and Braves, because they were terrible for decades.
Yeah.
They were doomed to suffer because they had, besieged the sacred burial ground. And maybe that's true.
Well, hey, what about the curse of the Bambino when, the Red Sox traded away Babe Ruth? That hurt them for a long time.
Yeah, to put on a Broadway play.
Yeah,
that was what the money went for.
Yeah, it really did. Billy, you look around, though, and you're talking about North Dakota State, Northern Iowa. They're putting out some good players. There's no question about that, especially – offensive lineman. That's the hardest position to find players now, because all the 7-on-7 camps are all about the running backs more than anything, the quarterbacks and the receivers. And the offensive linemen are just kind of there, but they're not dealt with the way they should be. You got to develop them. And I'm surprised that you don't have more Hall of Fame linemen. I know Willie Anderson from Auburn, who's up for the Hall of Fame, or he's been up for the Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Fame several times. He's in Atlanta. I know he's got a camp, a school where he develops and works defensive linemen. But good grief, there are literally a fraction of the linemen that there were 15 years ago. And it is really hurting. And if you can bring in a coach and a staff that knows how to develop offensive linemen, you can dominate your league quickly. Right now, everybody's picking Georgia to play Alabama. I don't think people are going to get fooled again on picking Texas A&M. And why are they doing that? It's because of the depth on the lines of offense and defense. But Alabama's offensive line hasn't developed in spite of the talent. Now they've got a new offensive coordinator coming in. Looks like Kevin Steele is going to be the new defensive coordinator at Alabama.
No.
You've got to develop players.
And that guy's got a track record. He certainly knows what he's doing. He's had a couple runs at Auburn where he was really, really good. So Kevin Steele needs no introduction. He's going to develop the defensive line, no problem at all. So, linemen are tricky. That's why, you build your football team from the inside out. We all know that, whether it's, high school, college, or pro, if you don't have a good line, you're not going to win. I mean, getting back to the Falcons a minute ago, we had Matt Ryan here for a long time, MVP 1 year, took him to the Super Bowl. He needs a statue just for that, even though they didn't win it. I mean, because the Falcons have been to 2 Super Bowls in 60 years. But you could tell they showed his stats year by year and whether or not he had a quality offensive line or not. And, most of us saw him running for his life the whole time he was here with the Falcons and figure, well, they never had a good offensive line. But a couple of times they did. A couple of times they had at least 2 Pro Bowlers on the offensive line. And in those years, he was off the charts, MVP caliber. And then other times where they didn't invest in offensive linemen or they had some draft busts, which they did, then, he was on his back the whole time. And, he played on AstroTurf his whole career, so he would have had a muddy jersey if he had not been playing on AstroTurf. But nonetheless, offensive line, you're not going anywhere. If you can't, even in the third quarter, and I know it's the NFL, but at some point you got to run block. You got to come out in the third quarter and set the tone for the second half by just run blocking down the field and having a 70-yard touchdown drive and, not passing all the time. I mean, when you get to finessing the ball where it's on the goal line and you're 3 yards away and you can't punch that in, you would rather throw it. That's nuts. A team that can really assert themselves will run it in from there. They're not going to try to pass the ball at the goal line. But I saw the Falcons do it a million times with Ryan as their quarterback, and I guess they just didn't have the confidence that the line could blow a hole open big enough. But it's frustrating to watch when you don't have a good offensive line, no doubt.
Who were the 3 players the Falcons had for 10 years straight? Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Josh Harris, the deep snapper. It's got a reference from a listener. He was a free agent, of course, that came from Auburn, but they were there together. Because Josh said on this show, we're the only 3 players who've been here for 10 years. And then Julio got traded to the Titans, and I think he's now with Tampa Bay.
Allegedly, there was a sighting that he was there, but I mean, the thing is, and I mean, I think with him, the revelation came out once he got traded to the Titans and he demanded a trade like an NBA player that, he wasn't practicing during the week. He had like a chronic foot injury that he basically just showed up on the weekends and played in the game. And he was such a superior athlete that he could get away with that for years. But apparently for a long time, he was not practicing a regular practice week in the NFL to protect a chronic foot injury. He had like some bone that he could break it very easily, and he did a couple times. So he was always, injured, and he would be a Hall of Famer anyway, which is, amazing with his statistics. But, I think, he ended up not having a great attitude at the end, which is a pity. But they always paid him. I don't know what his gripe was. Whenever Matt Ryan would get extended, they would quickly follow and do the same for Julio. And so the Falcons for the last couple of years have been in salary cap hell, eating both of those dead money contracts. So, it's not like they cheaped out and didn't pay the guy. They certainly paid him a lot.
Yeah, the salary cap will eat you alive. And that's what is, Jerry Kirby, I'm going to get into that Friday when he's on with us, talk more about, the Chiefs. I mean, right now, they're, Patrick Mahomes, you just keep thinking of him as only being in the league for 2 or 3 years. He's been there for a while. But, as someone on the show Friday, I think it was, maybe it was Bo Carter, talked about Cliff Kingsbury was coaching at Texas Tech and did not win big with Patrick Mahomes. And then Cliff Kingsbury, he's out right now. He's no longer a head coach, but it's not unusual to have a super talented quarterback on a team and not win a lot unless, you've got to surround the great players with other great players.
Yeah, I mean, we had the great Jarrett Stidham at Auburn, and couldn't get much out of him with Malzahn as the coach. But
in 2017, Jarrett Stidham was really good.
He was, yeah.
Darius
I'm
Slayton.
just kidding.
Yeah, no, but he in 2018, it's like he went backwards. I don't think anybody will ever forget the Auburn-Tennessee game in 2018, October 13th of 2018. He got one time he was pushed back at about the 6-yard line, fumbled the ball. Tennessee did a scoop and score. Had a couple of, I think Tennessee scored 14 points off of his turnovers, but that guy's a big-time quarterback. And if he would have had a big-time quarterback coach at Auburn, golly, he could have, and he's still, like, he's with the Raiders now. I think
yes, he is. Yeah, and he will end up being all right for sure.
Yeah, he will. But yeah, it is so.
I mean, even Brady, the greatest of all time, when he was in Michigan, they kind of didn't know what they had. I think he started 1 year at Michigan, and he was a 7th-round draft pick in the NFL. So, that's the greatest example of all time of how can you have a guy like that on your roster at Michigan. And what was the baseball player for the Yankees that started ahead of him for 3 years at Michigan? Drew something or other.
Drew Henson. Drew Henson.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to work that. I mean, it's tough. Everybody always thinks that the backup quarterback's the best player on the team. All right, let's go right back up to Knoxville, Billy. Talk with Jimmy Hyams. Jimmy covers the Vols big time, has been doing it for a long time. And Jimmy, man, watching a lot of college basketball over the weekend. Billy and I were talking in the first segment. It's hard to believe that Auburn and Tennessee combined for a total of 89 points. What does that say about college basketball? And look, you got 40 minutes to win the game. That's the way I look at it. Auburn tries to get a three-pointer. There's no guarantee they would have made it. There's no guarantee they would have made the free throw shots. But that was a fun game to watch for some people if you like defense. But if you like offense, you probably watch something else.
I thought it was ugly. Look, there's such a thing as really good defense. There's such a thing as really bad offense. And I think we saw a little bit of both. But
yeah,
you mentioned the points combined. They combined for 88 missed field goal attempts, and they combined for 12 missed free throws. That's a combined 100 missed shots. As I wrote in my blog, Butch will love this game because it was brick by brick. I was not impressed with either offensive team. And look, I know they played good defense, but my goodness, Auburn shoots 11% from three-point range, and they were the best shooting three-point team in the game because Tennessee shot like 9%. Yeah. So I just wasn't impressed with either offense. Look, here's the thing about Tennessee. This is the second game in a row where they shot less than 30%. And so, in my opinion, because of that, I can't look at games down the stretch and say, well, I know they're going to win that game. Because if they go out and shoot 27% against Vanderbilt, South Carolina, or somebody else, they could lose. So this team has created more doubt in my mind. Look, they have a great defense, but offensively, you still have to be able to score some points. And Tennessee has that's their fourth game this year where they shot less than 30%. Now, they're 2-2 in those games somehow, but when you got 4 games where you shoot less than 30%, that tells me you got some problems on offense.
Yeah, and they're number 2 in the country. They go on the road last week and lose, 57-44, 67-54 at Florida. I don't know how good Florida is. Golden's in his first year down there, but they're number 2 in the country. Jimmy Hyams, do you see a dominant team? Is Alabama that dominant team? We saw what happened to them when they went on the road to Oklahoma. Look, it's tough to win on the road. I'll give them credit. I'll give them the benefit of that. But I'm just, Duke and North Carolina aren't even ranked right now. And I know Duke's in a first-year coach. North Carolina, though, in the first year, last year with Hubert Davis, got all the way to the end of the season, to the championship game. But what are you seeing in college basketball?
I don't see a dominant team. The 2 best teams I've seen are Purdue and Arizona. I like those 2 teams a lot. Look, when Alabama's hitting their threes and they're going to jack up a bunch, they had a game recently. They were like 20 out of 54 on threes. They take too many threes to my liking, but that's their DNA. So what happens is when they shoot 3 for 30 from three-point range, they could lose. But they've not done that for the most part. They're the best team in the SEC. Alabama is. And now I thought against Oklahoma, defense was optional, but they came back in against Vanderbilt and beat them, 100 and something to 44. Yeah. So Tennessee is not going to beat anybody like that. Well, I shouldn't say that. They've had a couple of games where they blew people out. They blew out Mississippi State where they shot 69%. But how often do you do that? So, but I think Alabama's got the best team in the league. They got a great freshman player. And by the way, Alabama's five-star freshman is playing way better than Tennessee's five-star freshman. And I think that's made a difference in these two teams.
Yeah, and we're talking about Johan Triori, a five-star freshman at Auburn. And I asked, Jason Caldwell from inside the Auburn Tigers about that. He said, well, the difference is Jabari Smith grew up with a father that played at LSU and in the NBA, practicing basketball fundamentals, teaching every day of his life. And then you get Johan Triori, hadn't played that much. He's a five-star. So you're right. There's a big difference, one five-star to the next. And a lot of the times, I think they get rated that high purely on their athletic ability or potential. As our good friend Jimmy Ott down in Baton Rouge covers LSU says, potential is a French word for you ain't done a damn thing yet. And it's he's a lot more colorful than that. But I mean, that is frustrating. But Rick Barnes, everywhere he goes, Jimmy, and we're about to go to a break. I want you to talk about him. He wins Clemson, 17 years at Texas. He's at Tennessee. Always going to have his team ready to play. Bruce Pearl, good coach too, but combined to miss 100 shots. That's a record. We'll be right back with more on Sidelines. All right, Jimmy, you referenced 100 missed shots between Auburn and Tennessee in that game Saturday. And I can't remember the last time I've seen a game like that. But 4 times you said Tennessee has shot 30% or less this year, and they're 2-2 in those games. And then you also have to ask this question. Is college basketball so watered down because of AAU? I like to ask everybody that covers it this question, but the fundamentals are missing. You bring in the foreign players. That's kind of all they really do is practice the fundamentals. And what's gonna happen? And what other period have you seen where basketball has looked like this? The lack of fundamentals, lack of dominant teams or whatever. I'm trying to remember an era like this.
Wow. When they had the peach basket, I don't know. That's a hard question.
Yeah.
And I don't really know why there's not a dominant player. Some people would say, well, it's the one and done era. Some would say the transfer portal, because just when it looks like maybe you're building a powerhouse, somebody transfers out. I don't know the answer to that. I do think there's more balance with what we've got. But I'm also reminded that, so a week ago, at this time a year ago, a week ago, so what, 51 weeks ago, Kansas lost by 30 points and they won the national championship. And North Carolina was 15-7 or something like that, and they played in the Final Four. So if you get hot at the right time, you can make a run. And so that could very well be what happens this time around. But I don't see a dominant team. Somebody might get hot, and you say, look out down the stretch. But again, I think Purdue and Arizona are the 2 best teams I have seen this year. Will they be the 2 best teams in the middle of March? I have no idea. But I do like those 2 teams right now.
Yeah, and Purdue's been there before. It's just they hadn't taken that quantum giant leap for their program that everybody I guess that's a Purdue fan wants them to take. But Billy, jump in here in this conversation about where college basketball is right now.
Well, on that particular, game we were just talking about Auburn, Tennessee. I mean, Auburn last Wednesday played Georgia and beat them by 20 points and scored 94 points. So, maybe their legs were gone a little bit. A lot of times when you're missing shots, it's out of your legs, you're tired or fatigued. And maybe just the grind of the season and the SEC schedule was getting to both of those teams, because to score 94 points on Wednesday and score half of that, against Tennessee on Saturday, had to be a fatigue factor there a little bit. I mean, that couldn't have been all defense. If they're capable of putting up almost 100 points against a quality opponent in Georgia. So, maybe both teams were tired, and that was a little bit where some of the sloppiness came in. That it could be that, the league doesn't have any remarkable teams, but it's got a lot of good teams, deep teams, and maybe they're all just kind of beating each other up at this point in the season. That could be what it is.
Yeah, somebody else made the observation, Billy, that in fact, he's a former basketball player and a former staffer at Tennessee. He said he thought Tennessee looked tired and that Auburn looked a little bit fatigued also.
Yeah.
And that may very well be the case. And I'm not going to argue that. But, gosh, it seems like if you're 18 or 22 years old, you might have enough energy. But maybe the season wears on you so much that in February there is the fatigue that sets in. So that very well might have been.
It could be. And, 18-year-olds thinking that they're bulletproof, they might have stayed up till 4 a.m. on Friday night, and we'll never know. But they're not going to bed at 10:30 like we are. Let's put it that way.
You're right about that.
Yeah. Well, and you look around the SEC Big 12 challenge, Jimmy and Billy. I think the Big 12 is the best league in the country. Kansas was sitting there at, number 2 in the country and lost 3 in a row. I remember TCU beat them. Kansas State beat them. I think TCU beat them by 20 points. I think that game was in Lawrence. And again, they're the defending national champion. That league top to bottom is really good. And now look at the Big 10. You've got a lot of really good basketball players. But in the SEC, you've got more great athletes who play basketball. And there's no perfect league. But when you get the guys who are the exceptional athletes with the high basketball IQ, court awareness, how many timeouts, they know all that stuff. That's a Coach K team, and all of a sudden he's gone and Duke they're good, but they're not even, it's so different. In Villanova without Jay Wright, North Carolina, look, Hubert Davis the first year got North Carolina to the Final Four, but he was familiar with that program. I guess we're just in a transition year, and I'm with you, Jimmy. I think some teams, doesn't mean that there aren't going to be some teams that don't get hot. Remember where North Carolina was last year and where they finished. I'm sure that'll happen this year.
It might. And I think the Big 12 probably is the best league. I was looking at the Big 10 standings. I watched a lot of that Purdue-Indiana game, and Indiana upset Purdue. And then they showed the records of the Big 10 teams, and it's like, well, there wasn't a whole lot that stood out as far as they look like they're top-heavy. Kind of like the SEC. I think the SEC I think Alabama and Tennessee are really good. Auburn came in at rank number 25. Who knows if they'll stay in the poll? And you got a whole bunch of other teams that are just okay in the SEC. So you may have 6 or 7 SEC teams to make the tournament, but the majority of them are going to be seeded 7, 8, maybe even 11. So I don't think the league's as strong as the number of teams that are capable of being pretty good. But if you look at their resumes, they're not very impressive.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You have a 6, 7, 8 seeds, and Alabama right now they're 10-0 for the 3rd time in SEC history. So they're off to a great start. Now they'll play. They're not going to probably go undefeated. I mean, last year Auburn won the league with a 15-3 record. Alabama probably will end up 16-2. Something that'll be a championship in this league this year. So that's where I think that they will end up. Jimmy, I want to ask you now about Nico Lamaliva. What did you find out, or do you know much? We're told he has an $8 million NIL deal, and he's enrolled at Tennessee in December. 5-star quarterback out of California, one of the top 8 or 10 players in the country. Where is this money? Every school, I guess, has collectives and whatever, but how long is this going to last? Do you think this model, again, I ask this question to people that cover programs closely, is this a sustainable model? Because you've got regular fundraising for athletics, for academics, and now you're throwing in the NIL. You're getting your allowance twice.
I guess you'd have to define sustainable. Do I think the collectives are around to stay? Yes. Do I think that they'll be raising $15 to $20, $25 million a year to pay players? I do. Do I think Nico Yamaleeva has a $8 million deal? Yeah, it's $2 million a year for 4 years. Yeah. So if he stays 4 years, he gets $8 million. And I talked to somebody that saw the contract, so I feel confident.
Okay. Good.
Others have argued that it's not that much, but a guy that saw the contract said, no, it is $2 million a year. So do I think that Tennessee and other schools will continue to raise money in collectives to pay the players like this? I do. But there's a backlash to that. Ask Texas A&M. So they went out and they used a collective to sign the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country. And then a bunch of veteran players got ticked off because they weren't getting that money. They were using the money to bring in players that didn't play. And you had all kind of chaos. You had dissension within the ranks. And that's one reason A&M had such a horrible season. So you got to be really smart and you got to be really careful about how you disseminate that money. So yeah, I think this model is going to be around a long time. The key is how you manage that model. And I'm kind of in Nick Saban's camp on this one. You shouldn't be using all that money to recruit players. They should get on campus, prove themselves, and then you pay them based on NIL. That's what I would like to see. But look, that toothpaste is out of the tube, and I don't know if you can put it back in.
No, I'm with you. Once you get on campus, you prove yourself. That's one thing. But you're right. I believe that A&M model blew up because those kids got there also and were expecting all that money up front, and they didn't read the contract that said you've got to do this, this, and that in order to get that money. So great observation, and I'm glad to hear you pointed out that someone who's actually seen that contract, it's $2 million a year. So if Nico were to transfer, that contract is, I guess, voided, null and void. So however that works. Okay. All right. Billy, jump back in here with this interesting discussion, but a lot of factual information.
In the NFL, they went through this not all that long ago, and then they started having salary slots for draft picks, and to kind of keep a lid on it because the veteran NFL players were mad that an unproven guy right out of college at quarterback was getting a monster deal with guaranteed money up front and hadn't played a down of NFL football yet. So though they took corrective action with, having a tiered salary structure for draft picks. This is what you get as a first round draft pick. The quarterbacks are a special exception. They get more money as a first rounder than a guy that's an offensive lineman, but not much. That's how much the game has changed. But the collective thing is going to have to mirror that too, because you can't have guys that have been in the program doing off-season weight training and doing all the right things for a couple of years, and then some Johnny come lately comes in, with an $8 million contract and a Lamborghini. He's like, man, you haven't played yet, except for Bishop Gorman High School. That's all you've done so far, right? So, that's going to cause animosity, and why wouldn't it? So, all of these innovations have to take effect, and then you see what the unintended consequences are, and then there's corrections that happen. And the NIL and the collective are still in their infancy a little bit. And so that's kind of the way it is. It'll get fixed. I'm interested that the comment that there have been some caveats in these contracts that, hey, you got to stick around to get the money, and you got to do certain performance clause related things, because it sure seemed like show up, you get your $2 million, and you can, before you even play a game, you can actually leave and go somewhere else. And that was kind of nutty that there was no conditions on that money for a couple of these early NIL guys.
Billy, those contracts it just depends on how the school defines it. For example, for Nico coming in, I haven't seen the contract, but you have to make so many public appearances. You have to go sign autographs here. You got to go to the Boys and Girls Club. All these contracts can be written differently. There's not a uniformity to it.
Yeah.
So that's, who knows what it says. Some contracts may say, hey, if you transfer, you still get the money, which would be ludicrous, but I don't know. And you make a really good point about the NFL adjusting, but you had 32 teams that agreed to that.
Yeah.
Now, can you get college teams to agree to that? Will
Yeah.
Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher agree to a cap on incoming players? Who knows? I think it's harder when you deal with more people to get to the level you're talking about. I agree in principle, that's what should happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you can get all these coaches and all these schools to agree to it.
Well, and Rob has mentioned many times, given his background in the business, his day job of, being in wealth management, that all that money, or a lot of it, should go into a trust so these guys can tap into it at age 30, 35, 40, when they could really use that money when life has taken its toll on them a little bit. And hey, if I wait till age 40, I've got a windfall coming my way. When you're 18, you don't think about what life is going to be like when you're 40 years old. But I mean, the cooler heads, older people, more experience ought to come in and say, that's the conditions we need to put on that NIL money. You get a little bit of it now, but a lot of it should be put in a trust for you and your family down the road, when it would benefit you greatly, because you may not have an NFL career. A lot of these guys at 18 are convinced they're going to be in the NFL, but a lot of them don't. And wouldn't it be wonderful if they had 6 of that $8 million sitting out there in a trust growing, and at 35, 40 years old, they've got some of that money that's still coming their way that was protected. The New York Mets famously every year, and I think it's June 1st, they have Bobby Bonilla Day, because he had signed a 40-year $40 million contract where he got $1 million a year for 40 years. He had the greatest agent of all time, and he had the discipline to accept that deal back in the 90s. And I think they still owe him through like 2029, but he's been getting $1 million a year from the Mets for 30 something years now. And June 1st every year is Bobby Bonilla Day with the Mets, and they write him a check for $1 million. Brilliant. I mean, a lot of other guys should have that discipline to do a deal like that.
It's interesting that I don't think we've seen another contract like that.
It's been rare. Yeah. I mean, Bobby Bonilla's agent came up with the idea and said, you got $100 million already. Wouldn't it be great if they just paid you $1 million a year for 40 years, and that'll save you on taxes? I mean, he made the financial argument, and the player accepted that is a great idea. And now he's a 60-year-old retired baseball player. He's still got a lot of money coming his way. So good for him.
He could do a talk show and still make $1 million a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Jimmy, I like that. And the long-term annuity is what it really is.
Yeah.
It's like a pension. All right, Jimmy, here's another one for right now. I want to get your pick while we're here on the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts. Yep. We all watched him in college. The only debate really is he an Alabama guy or an Oklahoma guy? I think he's a Bama guy. But your thoughts on the Super Bowl coming up Sunday?
I have felt like in the playoffs that Philadelphia has been underrated, and I like them. I think they were the best team in the league. What happened was when Jalen Hurts got hurt late, a lot of people wondered, okay, is he going to be healthy when he comes back? Is he going to be 90%, 70% what? I still like them. I picked them all the way through, and I'm taking them to beat Kansas City. They are a very physical team. They run the ball well. They set an NFL record for rushing touchdowns, and Jalen Hurts has about, 16 of those, because they run a quarterback sneak that nobody can stop. And then they had like 75 sacks entering their NFC Championship game. They're going to get after Mahomes, whose mobility is still going to be a little bit limited. I just think Philadelphia is a more physical team. They'll line up and run it, and I think they will beat Kansas City. So I've got Philadelphia winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they can run the ball really well. Jimmy, I know you got a big day ahead of you, and as always, we love having you on here. You bring the high positive karma and energy. Let people know how they can follow you and your great work.
Well, they can follow us on our blog. I write a blog consistently at 991dsportsanimal.com. Also, you can listen to us on iHeartRadio. If you're in the area, you can find us at 99.1 FM, 990 AM. And that's how you can follow us. And then on Twitter at Jimmy Hyams. I got to tell you this real quick. I sent out a picture of my new grandson. He was born December 23rd. It got 355,000 views.
Oh.
Then I wrote a story about Tennessee beating Texas and on my blog, and it got 2,600 views. So people don't give a darn about the games I write about. They just want to see pictures of my grandson.
If you would have thrown a kitten in with that grandson, you get 2 million views. You need a kitten.
I did it with my dog.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Jimmy. Got one more question.
So.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you on this Monday college football, basketball, baseball roundtable. Great segment there with Jimmy Hyams up in Knoxville. Man, the power of social media. 350-something thousand views of his grandson. 2,600 views of his blog of Tennessee's win over 10th ranked Texas that previous Saturday. Billy, you're right. You put a kitten in there, a puppy, or a frog. No telling what would have happened. But going back to the deal about these NIL contracts, in April of 2010, the number one pick in the NFL draft was Sam Bradford from Oklahoma. His contract was $78 million. The next year, April of 2011, the number one pick in the NFL draft was Cam Newton from Auburn. His contract was $22 million.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And I agree. How do you get everybody to agree on that? In the NFL, you got all 32 teams to agree. Now you got 131.
Well, the problem is, I mean, there have been a lot of high-profile busts in the NFL. I mean, we all know about Ryan Leaf and, guys like that made a bunch of money and never did anything. Heck, a lot of the quarterbacks in Miami back in the day that were winning Heisman trophies, Testaverde and, a lot of those guys, they never panned out like they should have. So they got paid a ton of money, and I think the NFL finally had enough of it. And the players were rebelling that this unproven quarterback is making $78 million, hadn't thrown a pass yet. And I've been here for 7 or 8 years. That's bound to create resentment. And these are professional. These are grown men. This is their day job now. They're not doing it as a sideline to being a student. So, as college football professionalizes, they're going to have to grapple with this just like the NFL did, And in the NFL, you got 32 owners, but there's always one or two that's a Jerry Jones that's a renegade. And he's, he either is calling shots and they all fall in line, or he's going to be the outlier when the rest of the NFL owners all try to agree to something. And, they got to get him on board. So it's not easy to get 32 billionaires to agree any more than it would be easy to get 100 Division I football programs to agree on something, and it's, you can't get 3 people to agree on stuff. So it's that part of it's never easy, but money talks. And when everybody said, hey, I just had to, cut a guy that has $50 million guarantee, but he couldn't perform on the field. We cut him anyway. You know, you don't need to have that happen more than a couple times before something's got to change, right?
Well, yeah, and I also like you're bringing up the Bobby Bonilla deal of 40 years, $1 million each year. He already had $100 million. That's nice. Every year he gets that $1 million. That's good stuff. And Franz Beard, along with Frank Duffy, perhaps the two most interesting men in the world. You know, he once went into the forest and spent 3 days to determine whether or not if a tree fell in the forest and no one witnessed it, would it make any noise? And he proved that, Franz, it does.
Well, it's like this. If an FSU person says something, is it still dumb if nobody can hear it?
I love it, man. Franz Beard, deep in the bunker down in Gainesville, Florida, GatorBaitMedia.com. Catch him, GatorBaitMedia.com. His daily thoughts and one final pithy thought. Again, not just on the Gators, great coverage of the Florida Gators, the flagship program in the state of Florida, but also the SEC and college football. And he has great insight. And, you know, you can't look, you can look up in the sky and it's a plane. It's a bird.
It's a weather balloon.
It could be anything. It could be anything, you know, just making its way across the country. But Franz, Billy and I want to know your thoughts right now. We're talking about, you know, we keep talking about the Jaden Rashada NIL deal that fell through. And from what I gather, Florida called his bluff and said, go beat that offer. Go beat this that your people want. And that Billy Napier came in and said, hey, minute, what are y'all doing offering all this money? We can't do that. And you said Florida got out over their skis. And you said Washington, Arizona State, or Arizona is where Rashada would end up. Well, guess what? He ended up at Arizona State. I don't know what his NIL deal is.
$300,000.
Okay.
Over 3 years.
Yeah. And he was supposed
not a year, over 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think about it, I know Billy Roberts had to drop just now, and he'll be back on with us here later in the week. But they got caught, his people, his handlers were exposed. You go from $13.6 million that Florida was supposedly going to pay him, and he gets $300,000 at Arizona State. And you nailed it. Talking about being out over your skis, you were ahead of the tip of the spear, Franz.
Well, here's the thing that happened. As I've gotten more and more involved in this, more than I really wanted to, actually. This is a case of what happens when amateurs on both sides, and I'm not talking about the University of Florida, I'm talking about amateurs with one of these collectives, and people who say they have more money than they do, get involved, and they wanted to make a statement telling Miami, see, Miami dropped him. Miami makes this deal for $9.8 million, and they didn't have the money. Miami just flat out didn't have the money, and all of a sudden they're starting to back off and trying to renegotiate. So he drops Miami because Florida's coming in here with an offer. One of these collectives comes in with an offer of $13.8 million. Well, they thought that was all cool, except they didn't have $13.8 million. And all of a sudden they start scrambling around looking for money. And these people are saying, wait a second, I'm not going to pay this kid $13.8 million. I'm not going to participate in paying him $13.8. A Florida billionaire who has gotten involved in other things. His name is on a baseball park and so on some other things. Got in and said, okay, here's the deal. I'll salvage this. $1 million up front, $1 million a year for 3 years. And at the end of 2 years, because remember this, after 3 years, you can go to the NFL. So if you've really shown something after 2 years, will up the ante in year 3, will renegotiate. So $4 million guaranteed. And that the people with the Rashadas said, the amateurs who were directing them said, no, we want the 13.8. And finally, Florida washed its hands of it. Now, I can tell you, I know enough about this to know that if the truth, all the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth comes out, there are going to be a lot of people who are really embarrassed by this. Billy Napier not being one of them, but there are going to be a whole lot of people that are truly embarrassed by this, and it's things like this that are going to drive us to a point where, whether we like it or not, college football is going to secede from college and the NCAA. What you're going to have is a true minor league, because you cannot allow college football to continue under the auspices of academics who know nothing about the sport, who know nothing about business. What's that old saying? Those who can, those who can't teach at a university,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so we're going to end up with, because see, here's the deal, Rob. The NCAA can't set up a brand new set of rules. That's why they hired this guy, Charlie, what is it, Green or whatever his name is, Charlie Browne, Charlie Green, Charlie Chuckham. I don't know what his name is. But the former governor of Massachusetts, he's supposed to run the NCAA now for Mark Emmert, who is the blithering idiot who shouldn't be allowed to run a convenience store. And they bring in this guy, they bring in the new guy. And his connection is he has no connection to sports, but he's a politician. And so they think he can go lobby Congress for a new set of rules. Well, Congress can't do anything right. They never have. They never will be able to. They can't even figure out that they're supposed to unzip your pants before you pee. But that's what they do. So it's going to take them seceding. And when they secede, then you can set up rules and regulations that you can't, because the NCAA lost the Alston case. For them to set up rules now and say, after they've already allowed this stuff, that would be considered restriction of trade. Can't do it. But a new organization can come in there and do that because they're brand new and it's a brand new organization. You can say they can sue all day long, say it's a conspiracy, but it won't hold up in court. And when they do that, they're going to have to put in a salary cap. It works for the NFL. And you were talking earlier saying, how are we going to get 131 schools to agree to it? Well, the NFL does have an advantage in that they take the television money and everybody gets an equal share of the pie. Yeah, everybody does. You got 30 NFL teams, and plus you get the NFL gets its cut of the pie. So out of this whole thing, you have 31 cuts, and that's it. Now, the power schools are never going to agree to, for example, the Mighty Mac getting an equal share of the pie. They'll never agree to that. They'll never agree to the Fun Belt getting one, or the Mountain West, or any of these other school conferences. But you're just the same. You're going to have to set it up so that each conference is bound to set up. If you want to join this thing, you're going to have to set up a salary cap for your conference, and that's the only way it's going to work, because we've let and all this could have been avoided. All this could have been avoided, but the NCAA, in its infinite wisdom, chose to fight it at every step of the way and lost in every court case every step of the way. And what makes the NCAA ever think they're going to win another court case? They're not. Yeah. So we have a convoluted mess here. I don't have all the answers to it, but I know that we're heading toward this. The reason it hasn't happened yet, and I think they'd like to have it happen, is because there's no infrastructure in place. There is no leadership. And what's going to happen is football is going to have to go first. And as they get the infrastructure in place for the other sports, then the other sports will come along. But football, first and foremost, is going to be the one that has to lead the NCAA.
Yeah. And right now, it seems like the bulk of the money is being put into football players. And basketball schools, the traditional basketball schools, I mean, I would say this, Villanova, they've won a couple of national championships in the last 7 years. Jay Wright stepped down, last year after the season as the head coach because I don't think he wants to deal with this. And I don't know how much.
Same thing.
Do what?
I think Krzyzewski stepped down for the same reason.
Same thing with Roy Williams. They don't want to deal with it. So I wonder, without football to provide all the fundraising, which pays for everything at most every school, whether people want to admit that or not, it does. I'm just curious how long Villanova and Duke will, it'd be fun to watch with them. Duke has incredible tradition. They have money, they do, but how much do they give to athletics? It's going to be fun to watch. But they haven't been winning for a long time because they weren't doing whatever it took to win. So you just take
and I got to tell you what, they still look 6 miles to the west with envy because, even though they won a bunch of basketball championships under Krzyzewski, I think Duke is well aware that their run to glory is going to end. North Carolina's hit a little speed bump, but Carolina will be back. Yeah. And for just those same reasons you talked about, Carolina fans will spend the money because all you got to do is look at what happened when they built the Dean Dome. The Dean Dome was built without financing it, and it was built with all the money raised in 6 months for it. For the same reason, the Aggies, all you got to do is look at what happened with them. Kyle Field, $475 million raised in a month.
Yeah.
Paid for in cash. Schools that have the money will spend the money. Schools that are stingy with the money, they may have meteoric rises, but they will have falls that are just as fast. And I am not convinced that Duke's not going to survive under Shire.
Yeah. You know what the deal is? They don't have the great foot. You've got to have football. I'm not saying North Carolina has great football, but they've got a good tradition in football. But you're the University of North Carolina, so you've got a broad reach. Duke is, Durham, that area, and they're mostly Northeastern students that come to school there. Now they attract from all over the country, but I think you've got to have a passionate fan base to finance NIL. And I think what we're going to start seeing is the traditional fundraising arms of the respective universities across the country merge, or they're going to fold NIL collectives into those traditional fundraising efforts. But the way the rules are, we had Davis Babb, the CEO of IPTAY, America's first grassroots populist college athletics fundraising effort, started in 1934.
I pay 10 a year.
Yeah. And back then, Davis told us one time, there were people who financed their $10 contribution. Because $10 in 1934, might I remind you, was a lot of money, speaking in relative terms. But it's going to be fun to watch as they fold those, because you can't take money. Davis Babb, again, told us on Friday from Clemson, they can't, in the fundraising arm, bring in money and then parcel it out wherever and whenever they want to. They don't have that authority. These collectives, the fine line is it pay for play, or is it pay once you've proven yourself? Okay. Again, that's what contracts are all about. I'm not looking at these contracts. I'm not an attorney, but we're going to talk more college sports right after this quick break. All right, Rob Browne back with Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com. And I want to say something about one of our new sponsors, RumbleBoxingGym.com/Midtown Memphis. His first location will be opening soon in Midtown Memphis, Union and McLean. The corner there should be late March, first week of April. Ann Camp Lee is the owner. She's going to open this gym first, and then she's also bought 2 more. Those locations will be announced pending land lease, approvals and all like that. But this is going to be a really cool concept. 25 weight benches with the weight training, in the middle group training, and on the other side of the studio, you're going to have 25 boxing bags. You're going to be working 45-minute grueling workouts with other like-minded warriors. Great training. It's great. You're engaging both sides of your brain, getting great conditioning, head to toe, boxing, RumbleBoxingGym.com/Midtown Memphis. Check out the website. Go ahead and join now. There are reduced prices available for memberships if you join now. And we'll be talking more about them on the shows going forward. And especially as we get to the grand opening, we're going to have to broadcast live from there and do some shows from there. But Franz, speaking of blows to the head and people that really just don't get it, I look at the people that are thinking that the current model that we have, you can't do it. Texas A&M, they're Exhibit A. Miami is Exhibit A1. But both of them last year bragged about NIL and how much money they were giving. And we talked about it on this show at length. Wait till these kids get there and they hadn't done anything and they dump a bunch of money in their lap. Or in the case of A&M, it looks like a lot of these kids didn't realize they had to produce results before they could get the money. And then you have a fractured locker room, dissension, animosity. You had a meltdown. And A&M, they were picked number 6 in the preseason. Appalachian State beat them there early. But they were a terrible football team. They didn't lack talent, but they didn't have a team that was united. They were fractured over the older players looking at the younger players. And we talked about this right before you came on with Jimmy Hyams from up in Knoxville. We're upset going, this guy hadn't done anything. He's getting all this money. And you had let's just say this. I doubt you'll have many reunions with these guys in the coming years. Not that you get together every 10 or 20 years to celebrate a miserable 5-7 season. But that's where we're going. And that's why the free market will fix this, is because you can't pay people to do things unless they've done them. It doesn't work that way in the business world. And, the colleges, if they continue, the ones that continue to do it are going to continue to get terrible results.
Well, this is what we bought into, and this can be laid solely at the feet of the NCAA. We go back to 1996, and I've said this on this show several times. Back then, players said, hey, we want extended health care. We're getting hurt, and the injuries last long after we're gone, and the school can't help us, or else it's an NCAA violation. You expect us to work a full-time job, which is what football is, and we can't graduate in 5 years, and we want to graduate college, and yet we can't do it, and the school gets penalized if we don't graduate our people in 5 years. The school gets penalized. This stupid APR thing, academic progress report. Well, you're asking people to hold down a 40-hour job, and then you're not guaranteeing them the opportunity to finish school, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's what they were asking for. They weren't asking for the moon. And the NCAA kept fighting it and fighting it. And the more they fought, the more the players said, Well, by golly, we're going to ask for more. We're going to keep asking for more because we're winning these small cases and chipping away.
Yep.
It didn't have to happen that way. And the NCAA, this is what happens when you put academics in charge of a sports business, which is what college sports is. It's a business. It's a business who has a side effect of getting an education for people. But but make no mistake about it. It is a sports business. One of the benefits of it is if you go into this business as a teenager, you can come out as a 21 or 22-year-old with a college degree. That's a nice little benefit of it. But the NCAA screwed up, and we're paying the price for it now by seeing college athletics in a state of flux that it's going to be hard to recover from.
Yeah, and I think we will recover from it just because people will only pay so much to so many of these athletes and get, next to nothing in terms of results. Just like in the business world, you're not going to continue to pay people to come in and not produce. And as far as, years later, these student athletes saying that universities should still continue to pay for their health care, what about regular students who go to school there and say that the stress that they were under when they were studying engineering or, finance or accounting led to them having health problems? I mean, think about that. That opens up a lot of doors that we don't want to open up.
Well, yeah, but the stress of an engineering student is not like going out there and getting your knee wasted by somebody coming in and at full speed and hitting your kneecap with a helmet.
No, I get that. I'm just saying you could just see attorneys out there latching on to this because this is how NIL started. You had a group of attorneys in California that pushed the narrative that these student athletes are all victims of the system and have been exploited, which is not the truth. Universities invest billions of dollars and provide them with incredible platforms. And they also are incredible platforms to launch their careers and develop name, image, and likeness. And now they want to be paid for it. But again, watch out going forward when you get a couple of people whose pictures on the front page of the newspaper after their team gets a big win. And they're like, hey, man, where's my check? Don't think it won't happen.
Well,
I mean, you got car wrecks nowadays. I know this. A friend of mine saw it. There was a bus in Memphis, a wreck, and the police were there, and they got on board the bus and were standing outside the bus and telling people, look, if you were not on the bus, don't get on the bus now and put ketchup on your forehead and make it look like you were in the wreck, because there are cameras on the bus that show exactly who was on the bus at the time of the wreck. But people will try that. I'm telling you, if they sniff money, anything is possible. And again, this is why I'm saying we ought to have a pension fund. Take that NIL money, friends, in a collective or whatever, that can provide for postgraduate scholarship money, healthcare, if that's what you want to do. But you want to make it to where it's a team. It's look what the NFL does. It's working. And we're doing a great job on concussion prevention protocol, whatever like that. The game is violent. It's physical. That's part of football. But we're getting the message about how to hit and be more efficient and all. And they're making better equipment. So, again, follow the money trail on this thing. That's what's going to solve all the problems.
Well, one thing that definitely could happen is this. If you put everybody, let's say you put all of your scholarship athletes, Auburn's got 250 scholarship athletes approximately. If you give every one of them $20,000 a year, that's $5 million, drop in the bucket. But then you say, okay, for every year you're here, we'll put $25,000 into your account. And when you graduate, that money is your next bonus into life.
Yeah.
There are creative ways to do this that haven't been thought of. But the problem is what we've done now with this NIL stuff is we've let the toothpaste out of the tube. I hate using that term, but it's so appropriate.
Every TV lawyer in America uses that tube, Franz.
I know, but the problem is it's so appropriate. It's something. It's something that you can't do, and this is where the issue is, that you've already let it out. So how are you going to solve the issue? And the issue is not going to be solved unless football secedes from the NCAA and is allowed to become its own entity.
Yeah, and we're gonna watch it. Franz, hang on with us through this next the rest of the show if you can. We'd love to have you do it because we're gonna bring on Wess Moore, ESPN 103.7, The Buzz in Little Rock, the capital city, and talk with Wess. He does a daily radio show, also Fox Sports Channel 16. He's out covering sports, high school sports, college, all over the great state of Arkansas. And Wess, I'll tell you what. Interesting discussion. That's Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com, talking about NIL. And you think about a school like Arkansas, which you're very familiar with. There's a lot of money up there. There is, in Northwest Arkansas, is really it's like those movies where they go deep in the jungle in South America, and you find this hidden city that's just the city of gold. That's Fayetteville, Bentonville. There's a company, Walmart, up there everybody knows about. There's Tyson Foods. There's JB Hunt Trucking. Unlimited funds. What do you know about NIL and what they're doing up at Arkansas? Because you get a kid up there on a visit. Holy shnikes. If he likes hunting and fishing and kayaking and canoeing and all that kind of fun stuff, he ain't coming back.
Well, the genius of Frank Broyles is he got the Tysons, the Waltons, the Reynolds family, the Baum family, all these billionaire families who absolutely hate each other. He'd say, well, look, I need me a new building here and need me a new arena. So, hey, Bud Walton, why don't we put your name on that arena? And then they do it. Next thing you know, the Reynolds family is saying, well, we'll put $100 million into the football stadium. And the Tyson said, well, we need a new indoor track. We'll do that.
Yeah, Wess, along the lines of what Franz was just saying, it's people have no idea what's going on up in Northwest Arkansas, but you do. Tell us about it.
Have y'all seen the most recent Razorback recruiting class that was number 2 in the country?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's a reason why. I mean, Musselman's a great recruiter, don't get me wrong, but money talks and, sometimes BS walks. But that NIL money helps, and there's a reason why they're recruiting with the Dukes and the Kentuckys and everybody else right now. They got another great signing class coming in. And football, look, Sam Pittman is still not up there with Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. It's not top 10, but it's the best back-to-back classes Arkansas has had. And there's a reason why. And Sam Pittman's a big reason why. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they're just paying and buying players. Sure. But this NIL stuff is helping a lot. In the days of old where they couldn't compete with some of these teams and getting players with under-the-table bargains, well, now you've got a lot of people who maybe they didn't want to do things illegally, but they'll do it legally. And so you're getting a little bit more money to spend and try to get some of these top players to come to Arkansas and then to keep them here. So I think it's leveled the playing field for some schools, and Arkansas is one of them because they do have some money that's willing to do things to help out the right way.
Yeah, Wess, this is a great point. And Frank Broyles, what he did was just unbelievable along what Franz is talking about is pulling all these families together. You don't see that at every school in the country. And that Razorback family pride. I mean, one state, one team. I mean, every school in the state, it seems like, still pulls for the Razorbacks. That's powerful stuff, man. And recruits feel that when they're on campus.
No, one of the most recent recruits, and they only had one guy sign in February because everybody else signed in December, but that was one of the things he said. He says, he's from Southwest Arkansas, but he said everybody there is talking about being a Razorback. And he said, that means a lot to him. No matter where he goes already, he's being recognized as being a Razorback. And some of the newest coaches that Arkansas just introduced last week, a new co-defensive coordinator and also a new secondary coach, they talked about this being basically a one-horse town. Now, that'll make some people at Arkansas State, UAPB, and UCA mad, but that's the fact. Arkansas, as a Division I program, it is the franchise. It is the Dallas Cowboys of the state, and that goes a long way in helping in recruiting and raising money.
Yeah. I mean, you think about you're in Little Rock, and, I go to Jonesboro, the borough, a good bit, and know a lot of Arkansas State people, and a lot of them, they pull for Arkansas State, but they are hardcore. I mean, they love their Razorbacks. And again, you don't see that. It's not like that in every state. And tell us real quick, we're about to go to a break. Sam Pittman, did he make the comment they got everybody in state that they wanted this year?
Yes, they did. Everyone that they offered in state, they got. So there's a couple of guys that went out of state to other schools, but obviously they didn't have an offer from Arkansas or a committable offer from Arkansas. But I think for the most part, they got everybody they wanted. But, the bad news for the 2024 class, they've already lost at what some say is the best recruit in the state of Arkansas, and that was Walker White, a quarterback at Little Rock Christian Academy. And that a lot of that was because of Briles. Briles did not target him. He didn't think he was the right quarterback for his system. And while they offered him, they didn't really do a good job of recruiting him. And I think that sent the message to the White family that, they had some other guys they were chasing a little bit harder than Walker White. Well, then
Wes, hold that thought real quick, because I want to get into this, because you are really opening up a lot of people's eyes. Wes Moore, 103.7 The Buzz in Little Rock, with Franz Beard, Rob Browne, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
That's what we're talking about in the recruiting. I mean, again, it's not unusual. I know when Gus Malzahn was at Auburn, for Auburn to come up and get some players out of Arkansas. But Sam Pittman, other than this one, and of course, who knows what can happen, but bottom line, and it's not like it used to be when a kid signs with a school because of the portal. It's like it's a temporary thing, isn't it? It's hard because you can transfer the first time, no qualm, no problem. It's the second one they put some teeth into it. But the state of Arkansas, high school football, high school I think they play really good basketball over here. I'm over in Parkin today doing the show. We're in Wynne, Memphis. We're all over, but we're over here a lot. And you think about some great players from small towns in Arkansas, like the pride of Hamburg, Arkansas. Scottie Pippen played at UCA. And there's just, to me, the better the programs are in Fayetteville and Jonesboro and UCA and UAPB, the better the high schools are, because it trickles down and they start going, man, they're going to need players. Let's send them players. I think it draws more people to come out and participate. And, you know, I've heard it said that the mark of a great high school football coach, probably above all else, is the number of players who come out and want to play because they want to be a part of that, not just the number of wins or the number of guys he sends to college. But, you know, if you're getting a ton of players out there, everything else usually follows, doesn't it?
Oh, no doubt. You know, the success of a program is what attracts people to that program, whether it's fans, whether it's donors, whether it's athletes. And you can see that with the baseball program at the University of Arkansas. The baseball in the state has gotten significantly better, and many people believe that is because of the success of the Razorback baseball program. Same with softball. I mean, softball was way behind in the state of Arkansas at the high school level. And the summer, you know, the amateur softball, travel ball was way behind in Arkansas than other states. And it's made significant leaps. And a lot of people give Courtney Deifel credit with what she's done with the softball program at the University of Arkansas. And talking about recruiting in the portal, Dave Van Horn touched on this not too long ago. He said that, you know, they lose out on guys from time to time. But you keep that relationship and you congratulate them, and you don't burn any bridges, because now what they're seeing is those guys are ending up at Arkansas later on in their career. That either, you know, maybe they made a bad choice, or maybe they went somewhere and they were told, look, you're not going to pitch at the University of Arkansas. They're loaded as a freshman. You need to come and pitch for us now. Well, they'll do that. They'll develop, and then they're like, I still want to go to Arkansas. Well, now that they've developed, Van Horn bringing them in as a guy in the portal. So I think Musselman has kind of gotten the moniker as being the king of the portal, but there are other coaches now at Arkansas that seen what Musselman is doing, and they're taking advantage of it. And you look at Pittman and the number of guys that, and the success that they've had in the portal the last 2 years, they're using it this year because they're still depleted. They got 9 more. They just signed 30 guys, and they have 9 spots open that they're going to target for the portal when it reopens, and after spring football, bring in 9 more guys. So the portal can be a huge part of a program. And I think even at some of these programs like Arkansas, that's in football, that's kind of the middle of the pack, this can help out tremendously.
Yeah. Franz Beer jumping here with Wess Moore, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz. Put that app on your phone, folks. Does a great daily sports radio show. Man, you will learn a lot, and I'm learning a lot right now. And Franz, you were the tip of the spear last year with me when you started reminding me of the miracle of what Big Daddy did of pulling all those families together, and Razorbacks are profiting for it.
Frank Broyles will go down as the greatest athletic director of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because of what he was able to do. Arkansas, we don't think of I think we see these reports that Arkansas is like the 5th poorest state in the union or something like that. I don't know what the number is, but it ranks, it doesn't rank near the top. But you look at their facilities, they have world-class facilities. The school is a terrific school. You can get a first-class education at the University of Arkansas. They have some really good research going on there at the school. And it's a beautiful campus. You got nice, friendly people there. There's a lot to like about it. Heck, when we went there, I'll never forget, Florida goes there in 2008. It was the week after the Tebow promise. And we get there, and all of a sudden we got the media thing on there. And next thing you know, they've got people in golf carts there unloading all of our gear, because we came over in a van, because there were Buddy Martin and me and Brendan Martin and our photographer and our radio guy. We had like 5 or 6 of us there. And they're there before we can even get the car stopped. They're there beside us. They're unloading all of our gear into the golf carts so that we don't have to walk up the hill to the stadium. And along the way, we got people saying, hey, y'all, welcome to Arkansas. And we're sitting there thinking, gosh, wasn't it, we go to LSU and they go like that at us and say, we're going to kill you suckers,
Yeah. It isn't that nice.
they're not nice at all. And
Wes, that's a great. I like what Franz is saying. I mean, and we love going down to LSU. They're all fun, but damn, you talk about an incredible atmosphere. I love hearing that, Franz, that they pick you up and take you, because there's a lot of hills up there. But personally, I like the exercise. But man, if you got a bunch of gear, that goes a long way in making a great impression on people, Wes.
Oh, no doubt. These days, they have us in a big commuter parking lot, the media, but you ride a bus up to the stadium and they drop you off the gate. So it's still pretty convenient. But I remember those days where they would pick us up in the golf cart and take us there, and you'd park right there on Razorback Road next to like the track or somewhere, and you would have a long walk, but they would pick you up in that it is, and that hospitality that pays off. It obviously paid off for you, and you remember that, and you talk good about Arkansas. So that's good marketing that they've done right there, because I've been in a lot of places where it's a long walk from that media lot to the stadium, and you're dragging a camera, gear, and computers, and your backpack, and it's 95 degrees, and you're like, gosh, this is miserable. So yeah, that's nice of them to take care of the media.
Oh, they did. They even let us go down there. Your big old hog must weigh about 18,000 pounds. I mean, bigger than your media board almost. That hog, I've never seen anything that big. I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, that's a lot of pulled pork someday. Yeah. But
it definitely is.
But
hey,
get big old things friendly as he can be. Even the hog is friendly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wes,
Nope.
isn't the hog's name? Is his name Ragnar?
Tusk.
Oh, Tusk. Okay. Yeah. Hey, here's an interesting.
Frank Ragnar, the center for Arkansas.
Yeah. Well, years ago, I had a teacher in 7th grade. He was from Rogers, Arkansas, and oh man, she was really cool. And she told us his name was Ragnar. And so I always remember that was a long time ago. Been several hogs since then. But here's an interesting statistic on national championships, total national championships. Now, this is men's and women's sports, all 21, 22 sports, whatever there are in the SEC. At the top of the list is LSU with 49, and Georgia at 48, Arkansas 48. So Arkansas is tied for second, one behind the leader. Now, probably 40 of those are track and field and all. It's just unbelievable. But that your athletic program, you got to look at it from every sport. That tells you how healthy your athletic program is. Arkansas and LSU and Florida, of course, here recently has been incredible in track and field. But those three programs are the tip of the spear in America, in the world, for track and field. I mean, Coach McDonald at LSU, at Arkansas, is he's on the Mount Rushmore of all college coaches, because to maintain a dominant program for that long is almost impossible, Wes.
No, they're very proud, and I think the track, it's the women's track's ranked number 1 in the country right now. The men are number 2, and they both had a big weekend. They're very proud of that. The Athletic Directors Cup and the rankings. Arkansas has been the best in the SEC the last couple of years, and top 10, top 15, although they don't play all the sports that some of the schools on the West Coast play and get points for. But no, they're very proud of every program and the success that, not just basketball or baseball. It's every program is having success right now. And Hunter Yurchek's, a lot to do with that, because of the coaches that he's hired and some of the others, what may be called secondary sports. He's put an emphasis on winning in every sport. And these coaches now have kind of banded together, and they all talk, and they're all, helping each other out, whether it's football helping track or track helping basketball. They're all, gymnastics, softball. it's one big family up there, and I think that makes a great environment to work in, and so you're able to attract and keep some of the top coaches around.
If I was a head football coach in the SEC in spring, I would encourage my athletes to participate in track and field. And I mean, now granted, you're bringing in people that are specialized in Franz and Wess. Y'all know that from seeing what they have at Arkansas, but at least in high school, that's why we're not seeing Herschel Walkers and Bo Jacksons, those kinds of guys. Very, granted, those are, freaks of nature. They're generational talents, but the 6'1", 6'2", 230-pound guy that can run a 9.5 500. I mean, it's different, but I think track and field, if you're a high school athlete, I would really have you doing track and field, the discus, the shot, what that does for your power, for leverage, or wrestle. Heck, Wess and Franz, I can remember when you could not graduate from Auburn unless you could swim. You had to pass the swim test. And they don't do that anymore because it probably hurt some little cupcake's feelings, but everybody should be required to know how to swim to graduate from college or just to get out of high school. That's a life-saving skill. But, Wess, you get a chance to travel all over the state of Arkansas, and you see all the sports, Fox Sports Channel 16 there in Little Rock. How healthy is the track and field, the state of track and field in the state of Arkansas? I'm curious what it's like in every state in the SEC, because you follow those kids that participate, multi-sport athletes. I think they have the best chance at having a long career.
It just depends on where you go. There are some places where the coaches are really pushing the kids into track and field as an off-season workout. But then there are others who now want their kids playing football year-round. Maybe not just football. They'll encourage them to play, basketball or baseball or wrestling, like you say. But no, I would say track and field is probably like a lot of other places. The popularity has gone down. And really right now you probably have more kids wrestling, or at least it's growing faster than track and field. I can remember the day when I first got here. That would be 2003. So we're going on 20 years where, track and field, that was an event where, the state meet, and then the meet of champions, where all the winners of the top two finishers of each classification would meet in the meet of champions to see who the overall champ is. And it's just not the same anymore. Honestly, it's changed a lot in 20 years.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to say this before, and I got another question for you. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We are the most blessed people in the world. Don't give to get, give to give. Find things that you care about and put your time, efforts, and money behind them. Wess, you were Friday, and Franz, Friday we wanted to get Wess on the show, but he was at the Arkansas High School Football Coaches Convention in Hot Springs, one of the cool places in America, right next to Benton, which is where they filmed the movie Sling Blade, by the way. What did you learn from that coaches convention that we need to know about?
Man, it was awesome. Over 1,100 high school coaches were there for this convention. And it wasn't just Arkansas coaches. That's what I learned. It was Mississippi, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Louisiana. They were coming from all over to hear the speakers. And you had Trent Dilfer there. You had, of course, Sam Pittman and his staff. You had Tim Horton came by. And it was a who's who of college speakers, and then the winners of the state championships, they all made a presentation. Their coaching staff made a presentation. And then during one of the afternoons or the evening session, Coach Pittman spoke, and then he had all of his assistants just available for breakout sessions for these high school coaches just to sit down with and to talk football and to just ask them questions about X's and O's. And for so many coaches, young, heck, even older coaches have been around, they just saw this as such a great learning experience for them to continue to learn their trade and to get better as coaches.
Well, that is, I know that you go to that convention every year. That's really interesting to hear that out-of-state coaches are coming. And I know Tim Horton, and you do. And Tim's at Air Force Academy now. And I think last year they signed 3 kids out of Arkansas in their recruiting class with the Air Force Academy. But yeah, I just see high school football rising in popularity. And Franz, down in Florida, second or third most talent-rich state in America. Arkansas doesn't even have 3 million people, but they also are recruiting. I mean, I'm seeing what Sam Pittman's doing, Wes, in Memphis. Their reach is far and wide. Wes, tell people how they can follow you again, keep up with you. And as always, we thank you for joining us, and let's do it again next week.
You bet. Hit me up on Twitter. It's Wess, 2 S's in Wess, _more, 2 O's and more. You can listen to us. We'll be on The Buzz here in about 15 minutes. It's 103.7 The Buzz. We have an app. You can download that, or you can just go on your laptop and type in 1037thebuzz.com and listen there. And then, of course, Fox 16 tonight and fox16.com. We got our big Fearless Friday award show coming up Friday night, where we'll award and hand out the top plays of the year, the top running plays, catching plays. And then, of course, it all ends with the Mitch Petrus Award. It's our way of honoring the top high school kid in Arkansas with character and just a great overall kid, an award after the late Mitch Petrus, who left us a little too early, way too early, and that's our way of honoring Mitch.
Well, you are true grit journalism, as is Franz Beard, both of y'all. Great show, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day. We are out of here.